Happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to another edition of our Mystery Wine Blind Tasting here at Field and Maine, and you wherever you might be in the environs of Northern Virginia, or perhaps somewhere further afield. We've gone far with this particular chat. So if you're joining us, let us know where you are from and that you're here, and we'll get started with this beautiful wine. The mercury is rising and the sun is out. It's a little bit warmer today with greater warmer temperatures coming this weekend, and as a result, I'm grateful to see a white wine in my glass, one that's pretty chilled, and that makes it a little bit more challenging from a blind tasting context. When a wine is chilled, it's not quite as expressive. That lack of expressiveness is coming by way of some of the aromas being muted based on or because of the chill. When you have something that's a little bit colder, you need to have more profound aromas to be able to sense them. So we might let it warm up a touch, or as it warms up throughout the scope of the next 20 or so minutes, we'll learn more about this wine. And even that, I guess I knew things about this group. First hello coming from Todd Longworth, and Todd's down in Florida. So this group travels, and we get to go with you. So I hope sunshine down in Florida is doing you well too. We're enjoying a beautiful couple days up this way. May at this time of year is spectacular, something to look forward to. Hi, Bobbin and Dean, welcome, and Rob and Kathy, good evening to you. We're so excited you could join us this evening. I'm up in the office as opposed to in the upper dining room where I normally am. The upper dining room is graced by a wonderful group of folks celebrating this evening, enjoying each other's company, and so I decamped to our office. This is the little space that no one really sees when they visit Field and Maine. You are not supposed to see it, according to the building inspector. When we renovated this building back in 2014-15, this little space is sort of an attic above the parlor space, the oldest portion of the building. And we were told that it was not fit for human use. And so we stuck ourselves in here in the form of an office. It has a high enough ceiling in the middle, but then has sloped sides on either element. So enough for a couple of desks to be shoved in here and a place to work from. So that is where I am tonight. Some of you are in Florida, some of you are at home. Who else is joining us? Thank you, Dean. I have full confidence in you to keep our secret, and I don't think it's going to get out at all. So let's look at this little wine as we get started, and others may join. White wine, as we said, of course, which I was talking to a table last week, and they were saying I could never do blind tasting. And I said, well, you should join us, because quite a few people had that same statement who are now kind of regulars on this particular experience and know quite a good deal. But let me just prove that you can do something right off the bat without even having to smell or taste the wine. And you just look at it. It's white, and so it's not red, maybe, but really it's not. Probably it's not sparkling. I don't see bubbles. It's not rosé. It's probably not sweet. We'll determine that in just a second, but you know all that already. So you've already eliminated most of the world of wine, and you're like a quarter or a third of the way there. So let's dive in and see what we see. So give the wine a little swirl. Do you see any bubbles? Do you see any kind of signs of sediment or anything floating in there that would indicate maybe a more natural wine that has some non-filtration, or maybe an aged wine that has a little bit of sediment coming out? Sometimes you see tartaric crystals. And those are things that are a natural part of the fermentation of the wines, and so not to be concerned with those kind of little crystals. Those are harmless. They're used to make cream of tartar. I don't see any kind of bubble or any other indication. I see kind of a golden kind of color, not very deep gold, but a sort of yellow gold kind of element here that's pretty sunshiny kind of color. So it's deeper in color than, say, Sauvignon Blanc, which sometimes has that greenish tinge. So we're learning that about this wine already, that based on the color, we think it's got a little bit of richness to it, maybe a little bit of warmth coming from a warmer climate, maybe. We'll see as we get more into it. What do you see by way of legs? Oh, the custom bombs are here. Hey guys, welcome. So excited you are here too. Delighted to have you with us this evening. So what do you see when you swirl the wine? Does it have sort of obvious formations around the rim here as it then drops? So You've gotten these tiers that drop and form legs. Do those tiers form quickly and sheet down and then sort of disappear? Are they just one long sheet of wine coming down? Are they very precipitous, kind of little tiny streams? Do you have thick ones that have kind of substantial legs that stay formed over a period of time? What do you see? Candy, Kevin, Kathy, hello. Welcome. So excited you're here. Trish, Andy, and Kathy, Candy, Kevin, and Kathy. We have just all the regulars coming back tonight, which is awesome. Thank you for being here. I have, some smaller tiers, like fine tiers. They move pretty quick, not crazy quick, but pretty quick, and they don't really stay. They're not like staying super formed on my glass. I mean, you see them for a moment and then they dissipate. They're slow to get started at the top, and well, you know what? Yeah, I'm giving them another minute. They're forming pretty well. Maybe it just needed a second here to warm up a touch. But Candy, my first impression was like you, kind of a big sheet, quick and thin. And now I'm giving it another minute, and under a little bit of a different background, I can see a greater formation. So there may be a little viscosity here. There may be a little bit of alcohol. What are we looking at when we're seeing this? We're seeing the indication potentially of some form of sugar. And as we've talked about many times before, that means, does the sugar in this wine relate to actually residual sugar? So is there sweetness? Or by sugar, we also are referring to the potential alcohol that's derived from sugar that's in the grape. And so the greater amount of kind of ripeness in a grape, the greater potential alcohol you could have during the fermentation, or thanks to the fermentation process. So you could be seeing thick tiers that form substantial legs that stay there, and the wine would be bone dry, so it's not sweet per se, but it's higher in alcohol. And that's what you're looking at here. So if they're fast and thin and not really leaving any indication, it's probably a little bit lower alcohol. So to put it in context, maybe like a Vino Verde, something very low in alcohol, easy drinking. On the flip side of that, at low alcohol, you could see big substantial legs by way of something with residual sugar like Riesling. And so you're not going to get a full indication based on looking at this and knowing that, but you are going to think there's either residual sugar or higher alcohol, and we have to determine that as we get to the actual taste. So let's do that. Before we taste, of course, we're smelling. And what are you smelling? Wow. Even as I opened talking a little bit about how wines can be muted because they're chilled, and this was chilled, it's warmed up a touch here just even 7 minutes in, and it's pretty expressive. There's interesting flavors here, interesting aromas that will then lead to flavors perhaps on the palate. What are you guys getting? Gosh, there's quite a savory note here. Todd, thank you. I didn't want to bias the group, but tons of it. White pepper, just tons of it. It's really pronounced. I couldn't agree more. It persists. And now I'm kind of, tractor beamed onto it. I'm getting sucked in and held captive to that aroma, where there were initially some other kind of floral, spicy notes. Like a first sip kind of reminded me a little bit of Gewürztraminer or Tarantez, something that had this kind of spicy note. A little bit grassy, Dean. Yeah, so you're getting some, sweet kind of grassy, lychee. Ooh, maybe we're headed in sort of a Gewürztraminer kind of realm. Anybody get rose? Rose would be kind of an indication sometimes of Gewürztraminer. Hey, Chris Perriman's joining us tonight. Hello, sir. Welcome. Chris, we're talking a little bit about a goldish kind of sunshine kind of color to this wine. No obvious kind of floating elements or sediment, no bubbles. So still wine, something that's maybe a little bit riper. It has a formation of some tiers that form into legs and hold a little bit, not substantially. So maybe we're not talking like 14.5% alcohol, but maybe we're talking like 13.5. just by way of some kind of estimation, but not a light wine. There is this savory element. There's kind of like I want to have this with white sausage, and um, young color and aroma, Chris. Yeah, exactly. And we were just saying too that how there's a nice bouquet here on this particular wine, especially given that it's chilled at this point, which can sometimes mute the wine. Dean, I agree. I'm not getting much in the way of floral, so like this may not be Gewurz that way. Could be a different expression of that. Could be, oh, I don't know, Gewürztraminer, say from northern Italy. Could be Traminet. It could be Tarantes, which sometimes you see some of that element here. But there's that white pepper. I don't. I mean, this signature of white pepper. I can't recall at this point a wine that has presented that way. It has this sort of spice profile beyond the white pepper too. This mace, and I don't know if it's necessarily mace, but I always think of it that way. Um, and I get some of that usually like in like a white Rhone. A little bit leesy, so a touch yeasty, kind of that profile. Sometimes texture on the nose, not malolactic, right? So brighter profile, so malolactic, ML, being the transformation of malic acids to lactic acids, going from, just by way of shorthand, going from sort of the acid of profile of a green apple to the acid profile of milk. So malolactic kind of softens that, and sometimes their aroma is associated with malolactic fermentation. One of them being sort of, in the most pronounced way, diacetyl or movie popcorn butter. So that buttery quality sometimes can come as a result of malolactic, and I don't get that either here. Let's try it then. Let's taste this wine and see what we can learn about it from the palate. First and foremost, is it dry or sweet or some variation in between? What's the body like? Is it light, medium, or robust? Do you have it sort of like skim milk, like 2% milk, like whole milk? Where's the acidity at? Is it extremely high where you're just puckering and the salivary glands in your mouth are going over time for seconds, that tens of seconds after you've tasted? Is it somewhere more moderate, or is it pretty low, and in fact not really presenting much in the way of acidity? Those things give you indications perhaps of climate and where the wine might be coming from. They also tell you a little bit about varietals. Certain varietals have more acidity than others. Contrast Riesling with Viognier, for example. Riesling has higher acidity typically than Viognier does. So let's taste this wine and focus on taste, and then we'll go back and taste it again and look at aroma and flavor and how they might match. So do the aromas we picked up reflect on what you taste and by way of the flavors? Hmm. Yeah, Dean, there's definitely acidity. Medium, medium plus maybe. There's a little lingering quality, and there's a lingering minerality to this, isn't there? This is not a fruity wine. Um, are you picking up fruit? Because we're always looking for a few things when we're looking up for flavors, but let's work our way through. Few being, of course, fruit, earth, and wood. Um, this has got a moderate plus acidity, as we just mentioned. Bright acid and some apple skins. Okay. Ripe Granny Smith texture. Skin contact, maybe, right? There's some texture here. Richness from the lees nicely balances the high acid, right? So there's a pretty acidic grape, not crazy, but it is balanced by that texture. There's a mid-palate weight to this that is definitely more than skim milk, for example. This is heading 2% into the whole milk realm. I wouldn't call it fully whole milk, but it has more richness to it. So it's medium body, maybe medium plus. Dry with a slight acidity. The Swanbergs are with us. Hey guys, great. The green apple element. So we're picking up some apple quality, huh? Hmm. An apple quality and a mineral element for me. That acidity's there. Yeah, Tandy, I think if there's oak here, it's kind of an addition to make texture happen more than flavor. Although some of the things I think we were talking about by way of the aromas of white pepper and spice might be attributable to some oak, or maybe it's just the grape itself, because there isn't a major signature of wood on the palate otherwise. So it's a neutral oak to give you some body and some weight. Um, some of that appley quality coming from the grape itself. I'm not getting a whole lot of that white pepper on the palate. How about you guys? Anything there? Hmm. This is an alluring wine because it's at once refreshing and compelling in a way that's a little bit more serious than something that's just easygoing, kind of acidulated wine, right? Acidulated water, watered alcohol. Like it has body to it. Like you could drink this on a patio if you had to, um, and that wouldn't be awful. But on a warm summer's night, this could be the star of the show with some lovely food and become kind of the table wine for that evening and go quite well. It has long legs. Jeff, you're picking up, Adrian. Um, it's not as pronounced in the white pepper, Dean. I agree, and Bob. And so there's an element here of that savoriness on the nose that does convey a little bit to the palate, but not anywhere near as pronounced. It's more about that apple element. It's more about texture and that minerality. Um, that's sometimes minerality and that acidity can kind of suppress fruit. I just don't get a real expression of fruit. It's more like the minerality is covering up that fruit. And Chris, you've penned my thoughts right there in the way of noting the minerality over fruit. Suggests Old World with some elevation, maybe a cooler slope before the rains. Orvieto, Robert, awesome. Okay, so for sure that's a segue. Chris is teeing us up with respect to Old World, and then Robert, you come in and smash that pitch out of the park with respect to Italian and Orvieto, giving you Italian white varietal. I think we've talked about this before. There's a category of wine for us when we're thinking about wines. Is it Sauvignon Blanc? Is it Riesling? Is it Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc? Is it an Italian white varietal, which kind of covers a large mass? And then we can kind of get down to the details of some of them. Is it sort of a Gruner Veltliner? So we have this kind of category of whites that we play with, and not to diminish the characteristics and qualities of the individual varietals in Italy on the white side of things, but there's some elements about Italian whites with a relative level of acidity, some texture, generally more savory elements over fruited elements, and that's certainly the case here. Chris, thank you for that too. You're a wonderful prompt tonight because in addition to the other Italian whites, I was pondering in my moment of silence there, sort of Alsatian whites, and I'm not sure that I would call this an Alsatian white, but I'm thinking about those varietals. Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc. We talked about Gewürztraminer. I don't think this is Riesling, but Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, those elements. Pinot Gris, there's not kind of that darker cast to this, and it's not super watery white. So I don't know that it's Pinot Gris, and per your note too, I don't think you think it is, but it has elements like it where you're getting that spice, that pepper, that savoriness. So yeah, it has some of those things, and I would think about putting those varietals in the context of northern Italy. Um, Somewhere in Italy seems kind of right. Candy, with her unabashed love for Sauvignon Blanc, thinks it's Sauvignon Blanc, and we should consider that. I mean, there's potential for riper, and if you drink Sancerre now, it has acidity for sure, but it's more ripe, it's rounder, it's a richer wine by and large, whether that's climate change or more concentrated production styles. You know, I haven't had a Sancerre that I can recall with respect to having this kind of white peppery note, but I don't think that's a poor choice and something certainly to be considered. If we say Sauvignon Blanc and we're talking about New Zealand, we should clarify that. I don't think we'd be seeing this from New Zealand, for example, but in an overall context, something like Sancerre might have that complexity and concentration. There's this almost waxy viscosity now with this wine being a touch warmer. Which, cross-referencing with Jeff and Adrian's comment of honey, like if that waxiness is there, you got to think about Chenin Blanc. Apple, we've called. I'm not picking up any honey notes or even beeswaxy notes, but the viscosity is similar in a way to Chenin Blanc, with that acid being higher and medium plus. Some of the characteristics here, I don't think you'd be faulted for saying, Chenin Blanc, but then are we drinking Sauvignon? Are we drinking South African Chenin Blanc? Are we drinking Montlouis? Like residual sugar and or some more of the actual tells of lanolin and kind of that woolliness. So it's like it's not Pinot Gris, but it's like it. It's not Chenin Blanc, but it's like it. It might be sort of Sauvignon Blanc in a riper context, and the minerality just keeps kind of persisting. So we're in a mineral-based kind of soil, and Dean's picking that up too with respect to this wine as it warms up. It's fascinating. I think we can center around. I'm more comfortable saying Italian white, but that doesn't do the job. And Orvieto would be an awesome call for Robert if. Oh, Todd, cool. All right, so yeah, let's dive into a little bit of Northern Italy then, or Italian white, right? Orvieto, thinking Verdicchio, and now Arnais. And Arnais is a very cool call because there is spice on Arnais sometimes. Like it presents a little bit like Pinot Blanc sometimes. And it presents like Chardonnay sometimes. It presents like it's got a savory element. Oh, I like Arnais a lot. Sometimes, for those of you that have done this a number of times, I have this moment where I kind of like bing, like thank you for playing with me, thank you for giving the idea. Yeah, there's this savory quality, that mace element I have tasted before in Arnais. Arnais is a varietal that you'll find produced in the northwestern part of Italy in the Piemonte. Interesting. Maybe, yeah. Chris is adding to the mix that maybe this is a new producer from the ancient world further east. So, like, you're thinking like Georgia, Hungary, something out that way. Ferment, playing in Georgia, you get these interesting wines that are made in Quevri that are kind of clay pots underground. I think we would see them more funk in this wine from that, but they do have savory notes, many more savory notes than fruited notes, based on how they're produced. They see like whole cluster elements. They see long fermentations with skins, and you get a whole different wine as a result. That would be kind of neat. By way of a yay or nay, do you like this wine? Do you want to drink it? Is this something that you would serve to friends or family that you find compelling and exciting? Candy, your note just popped up. I agree. It's not New Zealand for sure. Not Sancerre. No residual sugar, so you wouldn't get residual, I think, on most wines from Sancerre, and they'd be pretty much dry. And I agree, this wine doesn't have that, and so the profile here has elements that you could kind of square peg into round hole for Sancerre, but I'm not sure that I would love the exact call of Sancerre when, for me, something like Arnais might be more interesting. I think there's a little bit more texture here than Arnais, but I like that call overall. There's just this viscosity. There's this textural kind of weightiness. It's really pretty. So I'm glad you, Dean and Robin and Todd like the wine. That's good. It's it's not a typical wine. Like it has elements of typicity for some other varietals that we've been talking about, but I don't. I think we're dealing with a wine that is abnormal and not in the normal canon of sort of blind tasting regimes. This wouldn't be a wine that the Court of Master Sommeliers would test their candidates on. That's my guess. And that's what's kind of joyful about doing what we're doing. We're not getting scored and we're not trying to gain a pin. This is just to broaden our horizons and to develop our palates further. And tasting a wine like this, even if none of us get it, that's perfectly fine. It just helps us to benchmark other wines and to develop our palate further. Ooh, Sheila. Etna Shinnin. Eric's saying this. Yeah, Eric Coons. Thank you for chiming in. Etna Shinnin. I don't know if Shinnin grown on Etna, but that would be cool to try. I know certainly Catarratto and Caricante, and that's a cool call. Some of those wines can have sort of spice and texture and viscosity and acidity. So that's a great idea. I wasn't even thinking of white Etna. That's neat. Is anybody kind of pulling out a little bit more of a vanilla element as this comes on more with time and kind of a warming element? Keep needing to retop myself here. So we've got Italy on the map for sure, potentially Eastern Europe further afield, maybe Sancerre. Anything else that anybody wants to consider as we kind of zero in on our initial conclusions and then make our final ones? Sort of an undeniable spice profile with acidity. That is definitely where we are on this wine. There's still a little bit of that tart apple quality, and wine has remained pretty consistent on the palate. It hasn't changed, and we've reached our witching hour with respect to most wines, right? The 20 to 25 minute mark. Wines change a lot, and we see them shift, and this wine hasn't done that. It's remained fairly consistent. I'm getting a little bit of that vanilla candy too, just a hint of it, which I'm wondering if is an indication of sort of some oak element. But I'm not seeing a lot of presence other than that sort of creamy mouthfeel richness that is here, which could very well be just the grape and ripeness achieved with that grape that then allows for a fermentation that gets you a little bit more higher alcohol. I'm not getting a burn. Are you getting any retronasal kind of back of the throat burn? That would indicate higher alcohol as well. I don't get this. This is really well balanced as a wine. Even if a touch more on the acidic side, that's still found to be, I think, in keeping with the texture here. If we didn't have the same amount of texture, but the acidity was the same, I think this would be a bit more austere and difficult maybe to enjoy. But with that texture, it sort of lays down a thin padding that that helps to smooth out the jagged edge of the acidity. Kind of like having a sleeping pad when camping. Smooths out the bony hip and elbow and shoulder, makes it all the more comfortable to sleep on the ground. This is a little bit like that. Huh. Okay, so from an initial kind of conclusion standpoint, I think Italy gives us, for me at least, kind of the best option. I was pausing because a Chris comment just popped up. Italy with a fun, creative producer, just the right grape in the right place, right? So a little bit of higher elevation and some sunshine exposure to give you ripeness and acidity. Nice focused winemaking. Yeah, it's a nice wine with some moderate alcohol. It's a really cool wine. I think I'm pretty comfortable in saying that I don't expect to get this right, um, because I don't think I know this wine, but I'm happy to know it. And so I'm going to go with I'm gonna hitch my wagon to Todd's call with respect to Arnais, and say I think that Arnais is a good option for this with the spice element with some acidity. I find Arnais typically though a little bit more angular, and by that I mean this has sort of, if this is, if we're talking about a rectangle, this has rounded corners, and Arnais has usually sharper kind of direct right angle corners. Um, and so I might be wrong there, but I like the idea of that. I like the idea of being in the northern part of Italy where you can get some ripeness, not a ton, but you get some ripeness, and you get acidity, and you get savory elements. So Todd's calling it 2018 Royal Arnais. Not sure the producer. Well, you don't have to go that far as having the producer, but if you did, by all means. Chris is on the definitive call of Italian, definitive call of white wine, and I read that as Italian white wine. Kevin's joining the Italian bagwagon, which is okay with me. I'm in that bandwagon fully. But I like, say, the northern part. I also appreciate very much. Eric had thrown out sort of Etna, and there very well could be an element there. I found them to be refreshing and fun. I don't think I recall. I have to pay more attention. As much viscosity, and so we'll say for me, I'm going to go a very similar call to Todd. I think it may be a little bit newer, maybe more like 2019, because it's a young wine. And 2019 Arnais, Royal Arnais from the Piedmont in Italy. Producer unknown. Candy's on the books for saying French, but not Sancerre. So maybe you're kind of on the Southern Rhone element. Maybe there's a Grenache Blanc or something like that. Let's see. Got a lot of string here. More than necessary. Oh, cool. The 2020 is the vintage. This is pretty neat. And geez. So this is Nascetta from Marco Capra from Langhe, which is in the northwestern part of Italy in the Piedmont. This is a really neat varietal that, gosh, all right, so that's pretty neat because Julie and I tasted this months ago. With our friend Phil, who's a representative from Casella, and they're bringing this wine in. Some people call this the white kind of Barolo, the white Nebbiolo. Nascetta is a grape varietal that grows in the Piedmont, where you kind of find Barolo and Barbaresco grown. Not a lot of it produced. Textural, fascinating, savory, and I bought this wine for our spring wine buying event, putting it in a category or on the table of wines called white peaks. So something with sort of mineral peak, higher elevation acidity elements. And Julie evidently, when we were tasting this wine, flagged it for herself and put it in this tasting. So this is where Phil did a fantastic job of double duty, where he was like, sure, we can bring your wine. And then, sure, Julie, we can also bring that wine, and kept them separate from both of us because I had no idea we were pouring this for this as well. And Julie just kept her mouth shut as I poured it, or I put it on the spring wine buying event. So well done, Julie. And this is a fascinating wine. This is a wine, I think, 2020, it's young. It's expressive. It's showing really well. But boy, would it be curious. I would be very curious to see how this wine goes for time, because I think it's got a real character to it. And I mean, $30, a wine of this caliber, kind of white wine where you're not drinking Chablis, you're not drinking high-end Chenin, for example. You get something pretty special here that way, that you want to drink with spiced foods, with sort of Boudin Blanc, or with white sausages. I mean, even bratwursts, choucroute garni, that kind of classic Alsatian dish with cooked cabbages and sausage and potatoes. And gosh, you want to eat this with turnips and radishes, or radishes and butter, just sitting on the patio, just digging those fresh breakfast radishes through butter with a little bit of salt on them, and having this as kind of the first experience of this wine on your patio. And then you kind of go into poached chickens and seafoods, and gosh, you could take this a lot of places. It's pretty neat. I love your comment there, Chris. Yeah, 300 types of grapes that you've experienced in your life, and you've experienced many and never had this wine or heard of it. And that's the cool part. I hadn't either when I tasted it several months back, and why I wanted to put it in the spring wine buying event. And I think that's why pretty much Julie probably had that experience too. And why you'd never have this wine in a blind wine contest or wine tasting contest, typically because it's not fair. Like, we're not going to guess Nacheta, right? But the experience of doing it brought us Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, talked a little bit about Sancerre, we talked about Eastern European wines, and we talked about wines that had reference points to this and knew we weren't going to get it right because it's just not quite those things, but it's because it's Nacheta. Like, how are you supposed to know that? It's the second time I've tried this, third time. So, I mean, that's amazing. Well done, everybody. I think we did really well, especially you, Todd, for getting us up into northwestern Italy, and Robert for even getting us into Italy first with Orvieto. Like, that's cool too. So we're drinking Italian white wine, and they all have subtle variances, and you spend a lifetime just being able to parse out those variances and have to drink a lot of those wines. You could do worse. We didn't do worse tonight. We did quite well. So, very nice wine. Thank you, Julie. Thank you guys for playing along and for helping us get to a greater understanding of this particular wine. I enjoy it thoroughly, and man, it's staying consistent. You know what? If we have any left of this, we're pairing this up this week. We're going to put this on the tasting menu. So, cheers if you want to have some more. I think we have some more bottles, and we're about to put it by the glass with our tasting menu, our present menu, at some point this week. So, cheers, everybody. Hope you have a great week, and look forward to seeing you soon. If not before, then we'll see you in June on our tasting at that point, the third Thursday. Cheers, everybody. Good night.